Hello everyone, today is November 7th and we have something that's been a long time requested and coming, the Ana Guide. First, we're going to review each of her abilities and talk about how they should be used, and then we'll go into a little bit of decision making and what a fight with Ana should typically look like. So let's start with her primary fire. Per round it does 80 damage or 75 healing depending on whether you hit an enemy or an ally, but you already probably knew that. What you probably don't know, however, is that the gun has a cooldown of 0.8 seconds in between each shot, meaning it only takes 1.5 seconds to land enough shots to actually kill someone, at 200 health of course. 1.5 seconds. That's pretty darn quick. Of course, it takes about another half a second for the poison to kick in enough for them to die, so overall, it takes about 2 seconds to kill someone with this weapon. Alright, math is cool and all, but there are a lot of intricacies with this weapon that you're going to want to know before we move on, so let's talk about her scope a little bit. Now, obviously, her scope has the special property that it shoots projectiles when you're hip firing and hit scan bullets when you're scoped in. From what I can tell, the projectiles do not have a bigger hitbox than the hit scan. This and a couple other things we're going to get into later makes hipfire strictly inferior to scope fire in most cases. One advantage that hip firing is supposed to have over scoping is that you can move around faster. This just isn't true though, because if you use the jumping trick, where you jump as you scope in, you still retain your full momentum, meaning you can still go at full speed even when you're scoping in. You should be utilizing this constantly. You should be jumping on almost every scope so you're staying mobile, especially when you scope around corners. The other advantage hip firing is supposed to have is that you have more vision. With proper positioning and focus though, this really isn't a factor. I recently posted an Ana VOD review where I go over the type of positioning I'm talking about, but I'll briefly go over it later on as well in this guide. Suffice to say though that you should be picking one important area of the fight and focusing on that, so the extra vision you get from being unscoped isn't really useful. The last thing to consider is the scoping time. It takes 1/4 second to scope in, and I found that the projectile travels about 80 meters per second, meaning you're breaking even at around 20 meters, which is really not that far away. And anything past 20 meters results in the scope shot hitting earlier. And no matter how good your projectile aim is, players move pretty quickly in this game. Plus there's movement abilities, all that sort of stuff. So a lot of the times you can miss your projectile just based on random factors. This never happens with a hit scan weapon. Because of this, I'm going to be promoting a scope-centric approach to playing Ana in this guide, because that's what's going to give you the most consistency and flexibility. Okay, that's a lot about just Ana's gun, so is it time to move on? No, not quite yet. Let's just talk about one more thing real quick, her reload animation. It is long, like really, really long. As you can see, the bullets get into the gun way before the actual animation finishes. You can actually cancel this with another action. It doesn't make you shoot any faster, but it does let you stack up your animations to save time overall. The best way to use this dead time, this animation time, is to use either your sleep or your grenade, but it's also situationally useful for meleeing nearby opponents too. Always reload before using these abilities if you have time, which comes up surprisingly often. If you want to sleep someone, if you want to grenade someone, usually you have a fraction of a second to think about it or to line up the shot, and in that time just press R, let it reload the gun. It only takes a fraction of a second for the bullets to actually go in the gun, and then you can cancel it with one of those skills and get some free ammo. This does take a lot of practice though, so I suggest just meleeing after every single reload. What this does is it keeps the timing practiced, it keeps it in your head, and it doesn't hurt you at all. If you do it right, meleeing after your reload literally is nothing bad, and it's a good way to get comfortable with it. If you're used to canceling after every single reload over the entire game, it'll be no sweat when you need to cancel it for a grenade or something important in the middle of a fight. You're going to screw up a lot at first, but the only way to improve and to learn these tricks and to actually make them usable in the game is to use them a lot and screw them up a lot before you actually get them down. I personally use the click-click sound before the bullets go into the gun as an audio cue to know when to do the cancel. Alright, so we're done with the gun for now. Let's talk about her grenade. It has a pretty big radius now, and it damages for 60 or it heals for 100 depending on whether it hits an ally or an enemy. Plus, it applies a debuff that stops all healing or a buff that doubles all healing, again depending on if it's a friend or a foe. This ability is strictly better in theory when used on enemies because blocking all healing and potentially killing people is better than simply making more healing for your own team. Because of this, you should always try to find an offensive opening for the grenade. Of course, there are times when you're forced to use it defensively, particularly when an important player on your team is about to go down, like a Reinhardt or something, especially early on, but default to the offensive use whenever you can. This thing has a lot of range. It doesn't drop off very hard at all, so you don't need to be very close to use it. That being said, many players are just lazy and they feel the need to run up into melee range to use the grenade and chuck it to the ground or something. Don't be one of these players. Use it from its proper range and practice it. You might miss a bunch to start with, but you will improve, whereas the other type of player I mentioned will not. Remember, you can't get better without screwing up a lot first. This skill is best used very early on in the fight. The debuff lasts for 5 seconds, which is practically an eternity, so the earlier you apply it, the more healing you block and the more effective the grenade is. Also, early in the fight, you have a better chance to hit multiple players because there's more people up and they're closer together. Don't just blow it though, use it at the earliest possible good moment. Right as the front lines crash together and the Reinhardts drop their shields is usually the best time. Shields are really the bane of your grenade, so make sure they're all cleared up before you use it. The exception to this is when you're planning to combo it with an ultimate. If your Zarya has her ult up, you should try as hard as possible to save your grenade to combo with it. Also, if you really have your head in the game and you're predicting the fights that the enemy Zenyatta will have his ultimate up, you should save your grenade to counter that. If you aren't familiar enough to accurately predict that though, don't worry too much. Also, if you're getting ganked by a flanker, you can walk up and throw the grenade at the ground to both heal yourself and damage them, but that one's pretty obvious, so it goes without saying. Next up, we have Sleep. It has a pretty severe wind-up animation, and then it releases a projectile that does a massive 5 damage and disables any enemy it hits for 5.5 seconds, or until they take damage. But even if they do take damage, it still takes them a half a second to wake up, so you can also use it as sort of a glorified McCree flashbang, which isn't too bad. This skill is the opposite of Grenade in that you want to hold onto this as long as possible. Sleep is most effective when the fight has simplified down to only a few players on either team. For example, if it's 2v2 and you sleep someone, you're taking out half of the enemy team. In a 6v6 though, you're taking out much less, relatively. Also, it's kind of hard to hit, and between the wind-up and the projectile time, it's not a very consistent weapon at longer ranges or at strange angles. You want to wait until it's safe for you to go in, get up close, and get a good, easy shot off. The exception to this is using Sleep to cancel ultimates. You should obviously sleep ulting Roadhogs, Reapers, McCrees, you get the idea. Now, if you sleep a hero with 200 health and they don't have some sort of invulnerability skill, like Tracer has recall, for example, they're dead. You can combo them for 200 before they have a chance to get up, thanks to the 0.5 second stun time after getting damaged. To do this, you simply shoot, grenade, and shoot again. This all lands before they have a chance to move more than an inch or two, guaranteeing the kill. If you have a chance, however, make sure you go behind them. They have a brief moment to use actions, but not really enough time to turn around, so coming from behind makes sure they can't do anything to you before they die. Finally, we have Nano Boost, her ultimate. This skill is in the process of getting nerfed right now, so the exact stats are still a bit up in the air, but basically, you make a single ally much stronger, increasing their damage and making them more resistant to damage. It lasts a decent amount of time, 8 seconds currently, so the timing window to use this skill is pretty generous. This skill is best used when combined with an ultimate like Roadhog, Reaper, Soldier, Genji. When those ults are up, you should specifically look to combo with them. When you don't have anything like that available though, look for more generic targets. Reinhardt is a standard target, but there are other good ones like Winston, Reaper, and Pharah. Most of the other heroes aren't very good and should only be targeted in emergencies. Special mention to Bastion though, because he can be a very good target, both in and out of his ultimate. Now, this ability has been known to have targeting issues. It's very easy to nano boost the wrong person. Just be careful and make sure no Lucios are ready to jump out in front of you before you use your ult. Remember, it targets whatever your crosshair is closest to, so if you hit the wrong person, it just means you missed. If you want an easier shot, you can scope in. Just don't be afraid to take the hard shots with Nano Boost, like when you have your team all clustered up. Don't be afraid. Just try it. The more you use it, the better you get. Just focus on hitting the right target. It's very important, obviously. Now, the big thing is coordinating Nano Boost. That's one thing that everyone goes crazy about. I see a lot of Annas who are in chat coming up with these elaborate schemes on who's going to ult when and trying to work together with their team and get good ults off, and I applaud this effort. But it's not how you do it. You are Anna. You're a support. You don't work with your team. You work for your team. That's my philosophy when I play support. Putting the burden of coordinating and whatever on your team is just going to give them more work. A lot of times it isn't going to work out and it's just going to be subpar no matter how well spoken and nice and organized you are. When I nano boost people, I really don't say anything usually. We don't plan it. I wait for them to do what they want, what they already have practiced in their head, and I find the best time to nano boost them in that. What is the best time? Well, it is the moment right as they initiate, right as they're fully committed. The Reinhardt who drops his shield and goes for that first swing. You want to nano boost the moment before that swing lands. For Winston, when he jumps in, right as he lands, you want to hit him with that nano boost. In these cases, your teammate has already decided to initiate and commit to his action, and you're helping him. There's never going to be a communication error. There's never going to be a coordination error because your teammate has already committed. So all of the coordination is just happening on your end. When comboing with ultimates, it's a bit more obvious. When you see your Reaper just start to jump down for that ult, that's when you nano. When your Genji dashes in for the Dragon Blade, that's when you nano. You don't need to bother them with the details. You should know when to hit the nano button. It's all on you. That being said, there is sort of a meta use for Nano Boost, I guess you can call it. Ever have those teams on offense that just won't push ever? They're just super scared. The Reinhardt who just sits at the choke, too afraid to go attack. In this case, although it's technically suboptimal, throwing an ult on your Reinhardt will usually give him the courage to go and actually attack. If you're sitting at the gates of Hanamura and your team is too scared to go through, it's not a bad idea to just use your ultimate to make something happen. Try not to do this too much, though, only when your team really needs a firm shove towards the other team. Okay, so that's all of her skills. Now that we have that all discussed, let's quickly go over what a team fight should look like for Anna. You should always start fights pretty far back. Remember to position yourself in a way that you're only exposing yourself to one area, and you should be zoomed into it. Listen for flankers, and if a Genji or something tries to attack you, feel free to use your skills on him. You should win 1v1. You should win 1v1 against any flanker. Remember that. If you lose to a Genji, a Tracer, or something, when you have skills up, it's because of your own mistake. So anyway, make sure you throw out a grenade as soon as there is an opening like we discussed before, through the enemy shields, and as the fight progresses, you should be slowly creeping up closer to the main fight, until the fight is simplified down to something like a 3v3, something like that. At that point, it's usually safe enough to really jump in and get close and get off that easy sleep dart, take out a good chunk of the remaining enemy team, and maybe even a second grenade if it's off cooldown at that point. It's 10 seconds, so it's a bit iffy, but a point-blank grenade that heals and does damage is very effective at this point in the fight. And that's it. That's pretty much the progression for Anna in most fights. The only thing left to cover is whether to shoot enemies or allies. This is something that comes down to a lot of just experience, but I can give a good base to start you out with. In general, I find almost all Anna players are too heal focused. They focus too much on healing. The idea is that you aren't being selfish or whatever, so you feel better about yourself because, Reddit loves healers and all that stuff. But if you really want to improve, you need to take the opposite approach. It's better to be overly damage focused than it is to be overly heal focused when you're looking to get better. Think of it like this. If you're focused too much on damage, it's very obvious. Your team will be dying too fast. From there, you can easily tone it down until you find that perfect balance. Just tone it down a little bit, once every round or so, right? If you focus too much on healing, though, there really isn't any indication of that, so you don't know how to adjust. You're just going to be stuck in that overly heal-centric mindset forever. unless you specifically try to break out of it. So really try to focus on landing shots on enemies. You'd be surprised just how resourceful your teammates are. Get a feel for how much damage an average team can take on its own before deciding how much healing they need. Of course, all this is experimentation, and it's probably best left to quick play so you don't risk your hard-earned skill rating, you know? To be a bit more specific though, and to give you a good place to start, I'll talk a little bit about trading. By trading, I mean your team loses a player and the other team loses a player. So if it's 6v6 and a trade occurs, it now is 5v5. So different players have different values at different stages of a fight, and that gets really complicated, but we're just going to keep to the basics in this video, right? So in general, trading benefits the team with a shorter spawn. Trading also benefits the team who's winning, because think about it, if it's 4v2 and you trade twice, it's now 2v0 and you won the fight, right? On Ana, if you're dealing damage, you're promoting trades because your team isn't getting healed and they're more likely to die, but the other team is taking a lot more damage than usual as well, so they're more likely to die. When you heal, you're trying to get more value out of the players you currently have. You're not trying to trade. You're trying to keep your team alive. So if we combine these two ideas, we get a basic framework to answer the question heal or damage as Ana. If you have a spawn advantage, meaning your spawn is a shorter distance than the enemy spawn, you should focus more on damage in general, because a shorter spawn promotes trading. You can reinforce faster, right? When you have a longer spawn, you don't want to trade for the exact opposite reason, so you should favor healing. Another factor is that if your team is winning, maybe up a player or two, you should favor damage because you want to trade, like we said before. If your team is losing, down a player or two, you should favor healing. You can see in this clip I have a choice. Do I heal my Winston, or do I attack the enemy players who are very vulnerable? The natural decision that most people will make is to heal the Winston, because that's the chivalrous, nice thing to do, and honestly, people just like helping out, right? You want to help out your team, but we are not about being nice, we're about winning, dang it. And my team is currently up 6v4 on the final stretch of the payload. This situation heavily favors our team taking trades to remove the last few players and push the cart to the end, because if we stay here too long, they'll keep respawning. And like I said, we're winning the fight, and the winners promote trading. Because of this, I choose to let the Winston die and just focus on killing the remaining defenders instead. We then go on to take the round. So anyway, guys, that was just about everything you would possibly need to know about Ana, I think, at least to start out, at least everything I could think of. So if you use this as a framework, as a starting place, you'll quickly improve, and then you can start to find your own unique style where you can twist and bend it to fit you. Ana is a really complex hero with multiple playstyles, and I suggest you experiment, experiment, experiment. That is truly the key to succeeding and to improving, is to experiment. So don't be afraid to try new stuff. Be sure to follow me on Twitter for updates and the occasional bonus content. Like if you liked it, which I hope you did. Let me know any questions you have and what you thought in the comments below. Stay positive and have a great day. Peace out, guys.